Good afternoon, everybody. Joseph Miranda, broker owner, Miranda Executive Realty. Appreciate everybody that's able to make it here, especially the ones who made it on time. It means a lot. Before we jump into this too much, let's just do our routine shameless plug. So if you're an agent here, you can share this with any agents that might want to learn more about our company. If you're interested, if you're not an agent with Miranda Executive and you're interested in learning more, scan that QR code. We are not a high pressure sales company. All right. So now that the shameless plug is done, let's do a quick disclaimer. Again, my name is Joseph Miranda. I'm the broker and owner of Miranda Executive Realty. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a financial advisor. I am a broker. So everything that I'm talking about today comes from that space of being a broker, right? So, this is my opinion. These are what I believe to be best practices, the same way that I ran my company. So, hopefully, you find this helpful, but please consult with, the proper authorities. And questions, if you have questions as we go through, you can put them in the sidebar there, or like Lisa's done, raise your hand. Lisa, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to make a comment about that funny face.
No, about the reminder?
The very first one, go back.
That's what AI does. Can we go back one slide, Irene?
Yeah, did AI do that?
AI did that, yeah. AI can do many incredible things and include take your photos and make you do all kinds of things. As you can see, that must have been pulled from some old stock photos, because my hair and my face doesn't really even look like that anymore. So
that is funny too. That's all I wanted to say.
No worries. All right, questions and answers. If you have any, you put them in the sidebar there. Or if you want to wait until the end, we can have a conversation about it. So, what's wrong with this here? Don't know. Give me one moment here. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into the training here. The foundation framework, right? Mastering high converting buyers and seller conversions, right? This is very important because if you have a lead, but you don't know how to convert the lead, then you might as well not have the lead in the first place, right? What's the goal of the lead? What is the goal, right? Our job is not to be, telemarketers working in a call room and just on the floor on the call floor all day. Our job is to go on appointments. So everything that you do throughout your day, whether you're on a phone call, whether you meet somebody in person or you're at a networking thing, whatever it is, your job is to convert that to an appointment. I don't care how many calls it takes. If it takes one call, that's amazing. If it takes 1,000 calls, that's going to be a lot of work for one appointment. But I think people really miss that in their day-to-day, right? I think they tend to get caught up in, I've got to make so many phone calls and I have to make so many contacts. But all of this is for one purpose, is to convert this lead into a customer. And the way that you do that is with an appointment, right? So people, when you're on the phone, you hear these objections, right? You hear all kinds of things from people, but the way to overcome those objections, we have objection handlers and you should use those, right? But there's a process to converting a lead when you're on the phone. I'm sure if you've had any amount of time on the phones, you've heard any number of these. You probably heard all of these, right? Well, not necessarily. This is not the problem, right? The problem is not the objection. Objections are going to happen, right? We should know how to handle the objection. But what the problem is, are these things on the screen right here now, right? Number one, talk too much. Just get to the point, right? You got to get to the point in the conversation. You have to get to the point in the conversation. Sometimes I've listened to people call. We used to do in-person call trainings, in-person calls. and you hear the person, and there's a perfect opportunity to close for the appointment or a perfect opportunity to close for a follow-up, but they miss it because they keep talking, right? You have to be aware, you have to be present in the conversation that you're having to know that when that opportunity presents itself, you have to take it, right? Pitch too early. People don't want to be pitched. People don't, we do our in-person trainings with our outside vendors that come in, and I tell them, don't pitch us. Nobody wants to be pitched. Like we're not selling timeshares, right? You're not trying to get a free pass to whatever for sitting through a 2-hour training or a 2-hour seminar at a timeshare. You're not pitching them. You're not pitching them, right? And you need to control the conversation. If you catch yourself, this is the expert tip. If you catch yourself, we got Susan asking, is everybody able to hear me? Do you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, Irene, maybe you can respond to her in the chats and see if you can help her. All right. So if you find yourself in any conversation, anytime, anywhere, if you find yourself answering questions like rapid fire, how many houses have you sold? Have you sold in my neighborhood? How long have you been licensed? Right? You're losing the conversation. If you're the person asking the questions is the person controlling the conversation. It's very important. So if you find yourself answering questions, you need to answer the question and then turn it around, right? How many homes have you sold? I've sold this many. Why is that important to you, right? Or what about that is important to you? And then follow up with the question and turn it back to them and take control of that conversation. You need to control the conversation, right? Lack of clear conversation structure. We're going to cover that. Right, we're going to talk about the structure of your conversation and some key points that you need to hit. Right, we always talk about the ABCs of calling. This is a little bit different. This covers the ABCs, but in a little bit more in-depth way. Right, so let's get to the point here. Right, what's the point? Right, the point is your foundation. Right, the framework of your foundation. Now, this is a 5-part series. I think it's 5 parts. We're building it out right now. So right now we're building the foundation because your framework is going to go on top of the of your foundation, right? So what's the first thing that you're going to do? And this is the acronym, the foundation of a phone call. So each of these different areas is going to hit. The first one's going to be the F, right? The frame the call. You have to frame the call. So let me preface this real quick. When you're on the phone with somebody, you don't know what they're going to say. You don't know where that conversation is going to go. So as much as, if you've ever been in any type of calling or, training where they talk about following up or cold calling or all of that, you've got to be flexible. There's no, okay, here's my opening line. You want to sell your house? Yes, I do. Right. And where are you moving to? I'm moving to San Francisco. And by when do you want to be there? I need to be there in 3 months. Can we set an appointment? Yes, we can set an appointment, right? Like the flow of the conversation is always going to be different. So you need to be prepared. So whatever I'm talking about today, it's not necessarily in this order. These are just key areas that you want to hit so that you can make sure that by the end of it, just like the ABCs of dialing that we have. So if you hit these key points, by the end of the call, you're going to have a higher likelihood of actually converting that lead, right? So number one, not necessarily the first thing you need to do, but it should be probably towards the beginning is you're going to frame the call. I used to love, when I would follow up with people, I always play with the scripts. And one thing that always worked very well for me is if I would say, hey, I was just giving you a quick follow-up, and just drop in the word quick in there, right? I would cold call, and I would cold call just random homes like neighborhoods, right? Hey, I just wanted to give you a quick phone call to see if you're thinking about selling your house. When you preface that, right, so I'm setting that expectation. Was the call always quick? No, absolutely not. Sometimes I can tend to be on the phone, even with, throughout the day talking with agents that are in the office. I can be on the phone for, 20, 30, 40 minutes. It's not a quick phone call. Sometimes I call people, hey, you got 5 minutes, and I end up on the phone with them for 20 minutes. right? But it gets them in it gets them in the proper mindset for what they're going to expect, right? If they give me more time, if the call doesn't end up being quick, that's okay, right? But you have to frame the call. Like, what's the purpose of the call? And then the next thing after you frame the call, you need to set the objective, right? What is the objective of your call? Now, you don't necessarily need to say, sir, I need to get the objective of this phone call out of the way, right? But you do need to, when you're calling, you need to have your objective, right? What is the objective and what is their objective, right? Are you looking to buy? What's prompting the move, right? So there's a difference in the way that you speak, but you need to figure out, right? You need to have the objective of that conversation. You need to know, okay, what's the purpose of this call? Even before you sit down and you make any call and you get on your CRM, you pull them up. You might know that you're calling them before they are going to actually be ready to make a move, right? And you need to know that going into it, because your close has to be around that objective. So if it's just a follow-up and it's for example, I have a listing coming up in Parkland, and I was out there earlier this month. They have some work they need to do to the house in order to prepare it to sell. And I told them I'll give them a call back in a month to check in. I have to have notes in my CRM, and I have to know that this is just a check-in phone call. The objective of my call is to check in, reestablish myself as the expert in what they're looking to do, and then get permission on the next follow-up, which should be a phone call in order to get the appointment, right? But the objective of this next call that I have coming up in the middle of March is not to get the listing. It's not to get the appointment, right? It's to just check in with them. And I have to understand that is the objective of that. And if you go into it with the objective, then you're already going to be set up better for success, right? Number 3, understand the timeline, right? Again, like I just said, the timeline of this Parkland listing that I'm talking to, their timeline is different, right? Every customer is going to have a different timeline. Some people, if you call an expired, they're probably going to be ready to list a property, right now, right? Unless something in their life changed, but the property didn't necessarily expire because they had a change in their circumstance. The property expired because the agent didn't do their job, right? The agent didn't do what it took to get it sold. And you might say, well, that's the customer. They wanted too much money for their property. But at the end of the day, maybe the agent didn't explain, the difference between price and value. So understand the timeline of what the customer would have. And how do you do that? By asking questions, right? And the timeline is going to dictate what your next phone call says. This is very important. This is very important to know the timeline of the customer, so that when you do a follow-up or you make your next phone call, it's an appropriate phone call. If they're not selling their house for 2 years, number one, you're not going to say, okay, I'll call you back in 2 years, because they're not going to remember you. By then, it's basically a cold call again at that point. You're going to have checkpoints in the middle, right? Hey, you're looking to sell in a couple of years. That time flies. Would you mind if I just check back with you in about 6 months just to see if that's still a good timeline for you? They're going to say yes, because they think you're going to forget to call them back in 6 months. But because you're a master real estate agent, you're going to put it in your CRM with lots and lots of notes, and you're going to set that task reminder to remind you to call them. And when you go to call them, you're going to follow up with them, understanding that you're calling in 6 months when originally their timeline is 2 years out, right? So when you read those notes, you're going to say, okay, this is just a check-in phone call. Right? And do you say check-in? I don't know. You can say whatever you want, right? Circling back, checking in, like whatever you say, that doesn't necessarily matter. But you need to know that, hey, we spoke about 6 months ago. I know you had mentioned you were moving to, I don't know, San Francisco in 2 years. Just wanted to see, is that still the case, or has anything changed with that? And they're going to tell you exactly. Still 2 years. All right, great. Look, I don't want to bug you too much, but do you mind if I give you a call back in about another 6 months just to see? right? You need to stay in communication with them because that 2 years is going to come before you know it. And what you don't want to do is call them back in 2 years and they don't remember who you are. So, but it has to be appropriate. You have to understand the timeline. They say, don't call me back in 6 months. Okay, when would be a good time for me to call you back? And call them back. And usually if I say 6 months, I'll call them back in 4 to 5. They're not putting it in their calendar that you're going to call them in 6 months. 4 to 5 months can feel like 6 months. They say, it hasn't been 6 months yet. Yeah, probably not quite 6 months, but close enough. Figured I'd give you a call, right? Doesn't really matter, right? What's next, right? Needs and numbers. So with one preface, and we'll get to this a little bit further down the line, needs and numbers. I don't qualify people over the phone. I never qualify anybody over the phone, not on that first phone call. If somebody asks me, they want to see a listing that I have a listing, they want to look at the property. I don't say, do you have a pre-approval? Are you paying cash? I might not even ask them, when are you looking to buy or sell? And we trained to this before. I call it the Spider-Man method. Everybody gets one. If you watch Spider-Man, you'll get that. If you don't, I don't know, Google it. But everybody gets one, right? So that's what I do. I will always show that property first. Yes, 123 Main Street is still available. Would you like to schedule an appointment to go take a look at it? Great. Why? Because I want to get in front of them as a human being. I want to get in front of them. I just met an investor. Just met him. It was late last week, I believe. He came from a lender that I know, and this investor wanted to look at a property. I sent him a bunch, and he said, "I like this one." Okay, great. When do you want to see it? Didn't qualify. Well, he already came from a lender, so I already knew, but I still didn't qualify him, right? I just met him there. And then we went over everything. At that point, I was like, okay, great. This unit's empty. We can spend as much time as we need to inside this unit, pull out the computer, pull out the phone, go over everything right there with him, right? And this is where I'm qualifying him and I'm figuring out where he's at, right? Like what price are you looking for? How many, and he's an investor. He wants multifamily, right? So I had to dive a little bit more into that. He wants to house hack, which means he's going to live there for at least the first year, which is great because you got to live somewhere and you might as well, be buying your investment property with your mortgage. After a year, he may, he's probably going to try to buy something else. Year, may, give or take. But it's important that I understand these things. But I didn't do all of this over the phone because I don't qualify people over the phone. I just don't, right? Next thing, again, this is not necessarily in the order that it should be in. These are things to just keep you focused and say, okay, when I have this person on the line, what are the things in my mind, right? How should my mind be working, right? Discover the emotional driver. Now, you've got to be careful with people's emotions. Number one, people don't play with my emotions, right? Don't play with people's emotions. You're not trying to pull some heartstring of them to get them to, do something that maybe necessarily they wouldn't want to do. People will see right through that, right? What you're trying to do is find the emotion behind the decision, right? Because the emotion will give you a little bit more leverage. I'll tell you, a grandma that wants to move to Texas to go live by her grandkids, there's an emotion behind that decision. Right? So think about the decision that they're making. An investor buying a property might not be emotional. I don't know. Right? But if you can find the emotion behind the decision, it's going to make it easier. Right? And then you want to find establish yourself as the authority. Right? Or find the authority person. This has happened to me. I don't know if anybody else has ever has ever run into this. But this has definitely happened to me where you meet with somebody and then, you're like on a listing appointment and then you figure out that somebody else should have been there. Like, oh yeah, okay, great. Thanks for that. I'm going to go over all this with my wife. You lost an opportunity. An opportunity was definitely missed. There was something that should have or could have happened that can't happen today because the spouse is not present. If you're going on a listing appointment, very important. Make sure, are there any other decision makers that need to be involved in this conversation? What about if you're dealing with an estate? If it's a probate sale, and there could be multiple siblings. There might be one power of attorney, right? There might be one executor, right? Somebody that is the one that's pulling the strings. Would that be the only person that you need to talk to, or is that person going to consult with everybody else anyway? Right. So figure those things out. When we meet at tomorrow at 2:00, is there anybody else that needs to be present? Right. This is very, very important, because you don't want to do it twice, or you don't want something to get lost in translation between the spouse, the husband and wife, or between the individuals that are in the will. You don't want to do that, right? What's a tie down, right? Let's talk about tie downs, for a second. A tie down, it's a closing technique. It's something that you say, if I do this, would you do this? Right. We used to do it in a recruiting process, and something that I used to do. And we would say, listen, if I could get the regional director on the phone with you, would that help you make a decision? And a lot of times it would, right? Just giving them that feeling of, importance, that, wow, this person will call me like I'm that important. That does it, right? So tie them down on a commitment. If they say, well, I don't know, the price seems a little bit high. I think this just isn't. Well, look, if we can get the price down on this to a number that makes sense for you, would you be willing to write an offer on it today? Right. And if they say, yeah, I would. So now you've tied them down on a commitment. Now, again, you're not twisting their arm. You get the price down to a point that makes sense for them, and they say, we're still not ready. Okay, well, then you need to dig deeper and find out what's really going on. And that could be one of those areas of emotion that you need to deal with. Right. But a tie down is a great close. If you can master the tie down, your closing rate will almost certainly go up. Right. If I can get this, would you be willing to do this? Right. When you reach resistance, figure out what is this area of resistance? Why are you resisting here? Again, we're not manipulating. We're not trying to make somebody do something that they necessarily wouldn't want to do. Right. But our job as the experts, our job as the advisor, is to help them to make the right decision. Right. If when I was showing houses with buyers, we would look at 10 or 15 houses, and I would know which one was the right one. And when I know which one's the right one, and I feel strongly about it, I need to communicate that to the buyer, because what you don't want to hear is, oh, we should have bought that one. What about when it's the very first house that they looked at? Right. And it checks all the boxes. It checks all the boxes, but they say, oh, but we just, we really just started looking. We don't want to buy a house on the first meeting, or at the first appointment, right? Or at the first showing, or whatever, right? You've got to figure out, right? Well, what if after we get you under contract, or while we're working on this, we continue to look at homes? You're going to have time to inspect, and you can always cancel during that inspection time frame. Is that something that would work for you? Would that make you more comfortable to write the offer, knowing that we can do these things? Right? Now you're giving them an out. Right, you're giving them a way, or you're removing that objection by saying, we're going to do this. If I do this, will you do this? Yeah, I would do that. Right. Okay, great. So then what do? You introduce the next step. Right. What's the next step? Depends on where you're at. Right. So again, no specific order here. There's no way to order these processes. Right. If I tie them down, I can tell them what the next step is. But what if I'm on the phone? And what if I just set the appointment? I'm going to tell them the next step, right? I'm going to tell them what's going to happen. Okay, here's what's going to happen, right? I'm going to send you some information by email. Take a look at it, before our meeting next week on Tuesday. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to plan on coming by Tuesday, and I hope you'll have had an opportunity to look at what I sent you by then, right? The next step should come at the end of everything. All right, John, no problem. Hey, look, it was great speaking to you. I know you're not going to be ready for a couple of years, but I've got you in my calendar here. Let me give you a call back in about 6 months just to see how everything's going. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye. Right. All right. All right, guys, we've seen all the houses. Looks like, 123 Main Street is, is your favorite. Let me go back to my office. I'm going to pull up the comparable sales. I'm going to send those over to you so that you can review them. And then we can have if you've got some time, let's have a quick phone call tonight to figure out, what we want to do from there. I told them what we're going to do next. You call them. Comparable sales are sent. All right, great. What do you think this house is worth? Right here. Cool. We got our number. All right, let's go ahead and write this up. Right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to hang up. You get all their numbers, and then I'm going to send it to you. I'll shoot you a text message when I send the offer over for you to review and sign. Always go over your next steps. Tell them what to expect next. We as agents we're experts. So and what the expert always tends to assume is that everybody else knows what they know. Just because you naturally know what the next step is doesn't mean that the buyer or the seller or your customer necessarily knows what the next step is going to be. You need to be telling people what the next steps are, right? And all through the entire process. And you also need to be, not what you're going to do, but what they need to do, what the lender's going to do, what the title company is going to do, right? What everybody is going to do. Talk about the next steps. And that is going to, that right there, that the next step conversation is something that will definitely frame you as an expert, because you know what's coming up. Not only do you know what has already happened, not only do you know what's happening right now, but you know what's going to come next, right? Because we're playing chess, not checkers. We're 3 moves ahead. We already know, okay, you're going to write the offer on this. We're going to send it over. The agent's going to counter at this. We're going to come back with this. Probably going to get it in around this, around this time frame. Once that happens, or not time frame, price range. Going to get in the price range, get it signed. Here's the people that I need to send this to. Boom, 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 boom. You're going to receive an email by this time from these people, right? And then you're going to go, put your deposit over here. Then you're going to make your application over here. You got another application over here. Boom, right? Here's your expectation. Because we know what comes next. Well, if we know what comes next, why are we not telling our customers what comes next? We're not doing them a service, right? Here's an expert tip. Overcome objections early. I had a listing. It was in Fort Lauderdale. And it was funny. This agent actually taught me this. This was a while back. And this was just by observing the agent. But this is an amazing sales technique right here, right? So I would always get feedback on the condo that there's no balcony all the time. Like, oh, I like it, but there's no balcony. There's no balcony. There's no balcony. And this agent knew the building actually better than I did. And it was my listing. And I had listed it for a few months, but he had sold like so many in there. And so I was like, all right. And I knew he knew more than me. So I was like, you do the tour for your customer, right? And then I was listening. And one of the things that he said was, the most common objection or the most common complaint that people have about this building is that there's no balcony. But if you look here, this is where the balcony would be. And if you have the balcony, then you wouldn't have this extra square footage. So by not having a balcony, you get, you've got this row of windows, you still have the view, but you also have more square footage inside the condo. And I was like, holy cow. Like a light bulb went off in my head, right? Handle the objection before it becomes an objection. What are the most common objections that you hear when you're on the phone, right? And think about, how can I get in front of that? And all you have to do is mention it. Because once you mention it and you handle that objection, they really can't use that objection anymore. Now they could say, well, we hate it because it has a balcony, but it's like, well, I told you it doesn't have a balcony, right? Is there any other reason why you wouldn't buy this, right? Get in front of the objection early on, right? Whether you're working with the buyer, seller, renter, investor, figure out what are the most common objections that you hear and how can you handle that objection, right? What if somebody wants to interview multiple agents, right? Like how, what's something that you can say to get them maybe to not interview the next agent? Is there something that you can say? Look, I know you said you want to interview, a lot of agents, but it really doesn't sound like time is on your side. Is what I presented to you today Do you feel confident that I can sell your house? Yeah, we do. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we should do the paperwork today and get your house on the market right away. All right, you've handled that. Now they can't say, well, we want to interview more agents. But didn't you just say that you feel confident that I can get your house sold? Right, what do you think another agent's going to say that I didn't already say? Right, I'm here right now. Let's just do the paperwork. I'll get the photographers ordered tomorrow morning. If anything, they can come out tomorrow afternoon or by the next morning at the latest. Let's get this thing going. Let's get the paperwork done today. Right? Like, what are these objections that you're hearing? Handle it. Handle it before it becomes an objection. Right? There's no objection that somebody can say that we haven't already heard. We've heard them all. So how do you handle it? And think about, before you go into a listing appointment, what are the things that they might say? They say the same things over and over and over. They all say the same things. Buyers say the same things. People are people, right? Most of their objections are not necessarily because they don't want to work with you. It's because they don't have enough information. So give them the information up front so that then now they have the information, right? And at the end of it, right? At the end of it, let's say you're on a phone call, again, no order, because we just had to spell the word foundation. You look there, if you look at all these, you'll see we spelled the word foundation, right? The last thing is nail the appointment. Nail the appointment. Very important, right? And confirm on the appointment, right? Time, location, who's going to be there, what, and again, set the expectation. What can you expect? And you can ask up front, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Let me ask you a quick question before I let you go. If what I say tomorrow makes sense to you, and you believe that I'm the right person to sell your home, would you be ready to sign the paperwork tomorrow? Yes, we will. No, we won't. If they say no, well, why not? We want to interview more agents. Well, now okay, got it. No problem. I'll see you tomorrow. You got all night to think about, how do I overcome that objection? What do I need to say to them? What is specific about their case? What else did they tell me? Right? Because previously you gathered more information, right? You figured out the emotion, you figured out the logic, the details, where they're going to go, by when they need to be there, what's taking them there. You figured all these things out in the course of the conversation. So now you have all night to figure out, okay, well, in that conversation, what's the objection handler to they want to interview more agents, right? Baby's about to be born in 2 months. You don't have time. You need to be on the market yesterday, right? Because I showed you the average days on market in your community. You're already beyond, right? You need to price it right? You got to do this. You got to do this. You don't have time, right? You push on the time button, whatever it is. Again, I've said it over and over and over. We're not here to manipulate people. We're not here to get people to do what they don't want to do. But what are we doing? We're protecting them. How are we protecting them? Because we know when they list it with us, they're going to get our absolute best, right? We know when they work with us, they're working with an agent that actually knows what they're doing, right? That knows the process, knows how to navigate a transaction. You don't know who the other agents that they're going to go with. They might go with their niece that just got licensed 2 weeks ago, never done anything. How's that working in their best interest? That's going to hurt them, not help them. You need to protect them from that. The only thing that we can control is ourselves. There's nothing else that we can control. We can't control anything else in the world except for ourselves, right? So we know that if they work with us the way that we work, we are the best option that they can choose, right? And they need to be confident that you are the best option that they can choose, because that's what we're selling. We're selling the certainty. We're selling certainty. In any sales job that you have, you're selling certainty. You are certain that you are the best person. We are certain on this. We are certain on this. Anything you're selling, you need to get your customer to certainty that whatever it is, they need to be certain on what you're doing, right? So let's do a couple of examples, right, as we kind of go through this, and you'll see that this doesn't necessarily go in the order that we spoke about, right? So buyer conversation structure, right? Number one, connect, frame, discover. We always talk about connecting, You have to connect. If you can't connect with people, then you're going to lose them. People don't want to don't want to work or speak with, anybody for a prolonged period of time if there's no connection. If they just don't feel it with you, then there's going to be a problem, right? So build the rapport quickly, right? Confirm their information, and then do the mirror and match. We've talked about mirror and match, right? I've told you the silly things that I do when I'm out on a sales call, right? The way that I build those connections with people. I've already talked about those things. It's very important to make that connection. That connection needs to come quick, because that connection, let's say it's a first phone call or even the first meeting, if they don't connect with you, they're not going to want to work with you. It's going to be off, right? And then frame it, right? We've already talked about the expectations, right? Ask questions, figure it out, right? Where are you at, right? And then get their agreement all along the way, right? All along the way, get the yes, right? It's a sales technique, sure, right? But get them saying yes, right? And then as you're with them going throughout the process, get more information, right? Dig deeper. Tell me more about that, right? Why do you think that? Why this? Why that? If this, then what, right? But dig deeper to try to find more. And look, this could be a seller, right? All of these things, they're universal, right? They're definitely universal, right? And then when you get to the qualifying stage, right? When am I qualifying them? Most likely at that first meeting. Probably not over the phone. Is there exceptions to that? Yes, because there's always an exception to a rule, right? But make sure you're qualifying, and when you're qualifying, make sure you're asking the right questions, right? Timeline, finance, motivation. And the nice thing about this is when you ask these things, this is your opportunity to do what? This is more opportunity to connect, right? Oh, really? You're going, to this place. What takes you there? Oh, your family. Wow, that's amazing. Right? Find a connection, right? But what's their timeline? It's very important that you know. You're going to waste your own time if you don't know their timeline. You waste all of your time. You waste all your time, right? Like, because there might be a buyer that's not buying for 6 more months. Oh no, this is happening. We can't buy for another 6 months. Do you really want to be showing them houses for the next 5.5 months before they're ready to actually do something? Probably not, right? At that point in person, cash, financing. Oh, you're financing? Have you been pre-approved? Do you have a lender? Who's your lender? Can you send me the letter? Now you can. Now you can have that conversation with them, because you don't want to drive around somebody that doesn't have an approval or money in the bank. That's where you start. Have you spoken to a lender? Yes. Do you have an approval? Yes. Can you send it to me? Yes. Great. Send that over to me. And then we'll set the appointments, right? I wouldn't necessarily want to drive around with the buyer that hadn't sent me their pre-approval yet. Everybody gets one Spider-Man rule, but after that one, I wouldn't want to be driving around with them, because if I am driving around with this buyer that says they have an approval and they send it to me, it turns out to be a pre-qualification from a bank that didn't do anything except run their credit and take a phone application. They have there's a higher likelihood that they may end up not getting that approval at the end of this whole process, right? So get the pre-approval in the beginning, so you know that everything was done correctly. Save yourself the heartache. It will save you a lot of time, right? And you can ask them, what happens if you can't buy within this time frame? What happens if you can't sell? Because you need to know, what are they going to do if somebody doesn't buy, right? If they're not buying, if somebody, if we can't close by then, we have to renew our lease and we got to wait another year. You need to know that, right? Well, if we don't sell, we're going to end up owning 2 houses because the moving company is already coming and we've already purchased something down in Texas. You need to know that, right? You're qualifying. You need to know these things. These make a difference, right? Like if somebody needs to sell right now, they already bought a house, they own 2 homes, don't want to own them for very long. Would you say, well, let's list it at the top of this price range and just see what happens? We can always lower the price if it doesn't sell. You probably wouldn't want to do that, right? They're not going to be happy because, hey, I told you that we own 2 homes and now we're paying another mortgage. What's going on here? Right? They told you, but maybe, you didn't know how to handle that appropriately or handle it properly. Right? You need to know how to handle these things, but you won't know until until you've gotten to that, right? So let's see, what do we got next here? Then it's always a consultation, right? It's always a consultation. Like, it starts out as a sales job, as a sales call, right? It does. It has to. You don't have a choice because, that's what you're doing. It's a sales call, but you're the consultant, right? That's what you are. They are consulting with you. They're paying a fee for what you know, not necessarily what you can do, because what you do is not necessarily something that just anybody couldn't. Anybody could buy a home without an agent. Anybody could sell a home without an agent. It's your knowledge that makes you valuable, right? It's your ability to navigate. And sometimes you do so well that they think it's easy. And on our end, I've had customers that I've literally had customers that tell me, wow, that was such an easy transaction. And I have to tell them at that point we closed. So I tell them then, no, that was not an easy transaction. Actually, the agent on the other side was a psychopath, right? And we had all kinds of issues all along the way. But it's a testament to your professionalism if you hear that on a tough transaction, because that's our job, is to be that buffer to make that experience good for them. By what? By using our knowledge, right? And being able to solve problems that necessarily you don't even need to go back to your customer and talk to them about. You don't have to go back to them, and you shouldn't. This should be this should be a stress-free process for them. Moving is stressful enough, right? Moving is definitely stressful enough. So, quick before we get out of jump to the next subject here, just a couple of things, I guess reminders, right? So what do you need to be thinking about, right? You're qualifying them. You're not interviewing them. It's not an interview, right? This is qualification. You're just figuring out what's their qualifications, right? Get the appointment. Get the appointment. That is the purpose. If it is possible to close for the appointment on the first call, you need to close for the appointment on the first call. In fact, you need to always be closing throughout the process. You're negotiating with everybody all along the way. Your first negotiations start with that first phone call and setting the appointment. You get to that appointment, your next negotiation is to get the contract. Whether it's a listing contract or it's a buyer agency contract, you need to get them exclusive to you. Right. So you do have to negotiate with your customer before they're your customer, to get them to become your customer, and after they're your customer, all along the way. Right. And if you can avoid it, some people won't set the appointment without it, but if you can avoid it, don't get into the details on the phone. That's a great question. I'll be happy to go over that with you when we meet in person. Right. Oh, why can't you tell me on the phone? Because it's not a simple answer. And it's not. Is commission a simple answer? To me, it's not. Right? Because if I just tell you that what my commission is, but you don't know what to expect from what I'm charging, you might think I'm overcharging you. But let me show you what I can do first. Let me show you what you're actually paying for. When you see what you're paying for, you're going to be convinced that my commission is actually a bargain. Right? But I have to show you. If you can just wait one more day, I'll be there tomorrow at 4, and I'm happy to go over it at that point. Right? You don't have to answer every single question over the phone. I think it's very important. I've done it. Don't get me wrong. I've done it. I've told people commission over the phone, because sometimes you're kind of in a corner. You might not get the appointment if you don't. Okay. So you got nothing to lose. But if you can avoid it, there's no reason to talk about it over the phone, because they don't know. There's no context to your fee. You need to give them context first, right? You need to tell them, here's what we can do. You have to build yourself as the authority in whatever context they would be hiring you for. You have to be the authority. They have to trust you, right? They have to know, right? All right. So what about sellers? And again, buyers, sellers, a lot of this is interchangeable. What you're really looking to do is build these skills, these communication skills, these connection skills, this, if this, then this type of skill, this, workflow skill, like you're really looking to build skills within yourself, right? Again, connect, frame, discover. Same things. Really, right? You need to connect with them still, whether it's a buyer or seller, you got to connect with them, right? Show empathy for past experiences. If they worked with with other real estate agents, if their house, let's say they're an expired lead, they're working with other agents, show empathy. Yeah, I can see how that can be tough, right? Because what? Because in your discovery mode, you figured out that, they own 2 houses now, and the wife's already living, in Minnesota. That's hard. Look, now frame yourself as the expert, right? And you're the one that can help them, that knows how to solve the problem that they have. You know how to do it. It's been on the market for how long? Okay, I've got a plan, right? Let me meet, be happy to go over it with you. Need to see your house, right? Qualify, understand. Same thing. You're in the appointment, right? You got to do what? You got to qualify with them, right? Qualify the house. Number one, qualify the house, right? What's the condition of the house? What's it going to take to get this house sold? Can you get top dollar for this house, or is this something that we just need to sell as is, right? Why are they selling? Yeah, and if it doesn't sell, you probably need to know that. If it doesn't sell, we're just going to stay here and live. Well, how long do I have? Yeah, 3 months. Okay. Now you better look at the price. You better look at the presentation of the house and everything. Can I sell this in 3 months? Because if you can't, you're going to waste all your time and money on it. Sometimes the best deal is a deal that you don't do at all, right? And again, the authority is their spouse. It takes 1 to buy, it takes 2 to sell. A spouse individually could buy a property. A spouse individually cannot sell a property if it's homesteaded. I don't know. There's, again, exceptions to every rule, right? But make sure whoever needs to be in the room is in that room. Just because you got the power of attorney in the room doesn't mean that the other siblings don't want to be involved, or that the power of attorney wants to make that decision unilaterally. Don't assume anybody else need to be here. When I come over tomorrow at noon, is there anybody else that we need to make sure is in the room? No? Okay, no problem. Yes? Well, how do we get them in the room? Right? Can you confirm? Can you make sure that they can make it? And then a lot of times you hear, well, my husband or my wife does whatever I tell, whatever I say, so they don't need to be there. Careful with that one. Careful with that one, because that one may not be, right? And again, it's always a consultation. You're always dealing in a consultation, right? You're there to advise. Position yourself as the advisor. Position yourself as the expert, right? Like it's really to give them that confidence in you. They've got to have confidence in you, right? Because you're selling them what? Certainty. Certainty of what? That I have the right plan to sell your house. My marketing plan is the best. Here's why. Maybe it's not, but my pricing strategy will get your house sold quickly, regardless of marketing. Maybe you don't have a pricing strategy. Well, the way that I, can get your house set up to show that, anybody that comes in is going to want to pay, more than what it's worth, because we're going to do all these things to it. It's going to show amazing. Or maybe it's all of those things all at once, right? But it's a consultation. Every single appointment I go to is a consultation. Every single one. Why? Because I'm answering their questions. I'm giving them advice. I'm giving them, best practices. Here's what you should do, right? I mean, if I'm going on a listing appointment, right, my authority is going to be my price and presentation. I know how to price your house right, and I know how to set it up to present it well, right? And the price, we're going to look at value and price and see how those two come together to get the perfect price for your house, right? And when you speak in that way, they become certain that you're the person that they want to work with, because you've positioned yourself as the authority, right? Again, yeah, my goal isn't just to list your house. My goal is to sell your house for the most money in the shortest amount of time possible. Isn't that what you want? Right. So if you're confident that I can, that what I've presented to you today can get that done, what would stop you from signing it right now? We want to interview more agents. Is there anything that another agent could tell you that I didn't tell you today that would change your mind? Right? Go down that path. Don't be scared to ask questions. right? Like a doctor isn't scared to ask questions because they're the authority in their position, right? A lawyer definitely ain't scared to ask questions. You have to ask questions. They should not be running the appointment. You should. Why? Because you're the authority. You're the expert. You're the one who knows. You run the appointment, right? Oh, hey, take a seat. You can sit right over here. Well, would you mind if we tour the house before we sit down and speak about selling it? Oh, yeah, sure. That makes a lot of sense, right? Why would you just sit down because they told you to sit down? That's not the logical first step. You need to see the house before you sit down and start talking to them. Try having a listing appointment without doing the house tour first. If you've done it, you know it's awkward because you can't really talk about the house, right? They can say, well, what about our bathroom? I don't know. I haven't seen it. Right? Well, what about the roof? I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't pay attention as I was walking in. Did you see the view? You know, we have a view. It's worth X thousands more. I didn't see the view because we didn't do a tour. Right? Like you kind of look like a fool because what? Because you didn't exercise your authority. Use your authority. You are the authority. You are the expert. You're selling them certainty. You by the end of the appointment, you will be certain that I'm the right agent to sell your house. You will be certain that I'm going to be the right agent to help you, in this home buying process, right? You will be certain. That's what you're selling. There's nothing else. There's a product on the other side of that certainty, but if you can't make them certain that whatever it is that you're saying is what they should do, somebody else is going to come along and they're going to be more certain with that person. Telling you, you're selling certainty. It's what you're selling, right? So what are the reminders for sellers? Simple, right? Same thing pretty much as buyers. How much is my house worth? Why would you give them a price over the phone? You haven't seen their house. How many appraisals have you ever been to where the appraiser tells you exactly what the value is on the spot? Oh yeah, it's worth $459,000. They don't do it. So as an appraiser, somebody whose job day in and day out is to value properties and, tell you what a property is worth. If they don't do it, why would you? Why would we do it? Right? Don't overpromise. That's a huge one. Better to underpromise and overdeliver. Don't do it the other way around. This is a marathon, not a sprint. In this business, you want to get to a point where you're working off past clients and referrals. And that's it. You don't have to do the hard work anymore. You don't have to pick up the phones. You don't have to knock. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you always want to do that. Let me not speak for you. Let me say for me, right? For me, I don't want to have to do those things all the time. Right? So what do? When I'm with the customer, I don't overpromise, but I do always want to overdeliver. I want to exceed their expectations, right? And again, don't talk about your commissions. That's like, what if something comes up and your commission should have been higher, right? Like, what if something comes up and your commission should have been lower? And now you overquoted it because you didn't have all the details. You didn't know all the facts, right? What if? Could be, right? There could be, so don't. If they force you, well, I'm not giving you the appointment unless you tell me what your commission is. Well, cool. You give them a range. It's going to depend. It's going to be anywhere from this to this, right? But definitely, you don't want to talk numbers over the phone. You don't want to talk numbers. You don't have enough information. I don't know. Do your own thing. Exceptions to every rule, right? So, where do we go from here? What's your final steps? So at the end of these, we always give you an action plan, right? So number one, you've got to, take the foundation and figure out, right? You've got the ABCs of the call. The foundation builds on those, right? So, practice the full conversation structure. Everything, everything that we talked about here, make sure you're hitting that in the call. And again, there's no order. There's no order because there's always the chaos, dynamic that comes into it, right? A huge thing that you need to be doing if you're not is tracking your conversions. How many appointments are you going on? The only thing that matters is how many appointments you go on. Right? Like I was talking to a real estate coach the other day, and we were talking about this. Do your conversions even matter? Right? Like, do your conversations even matter? How many phone calls that you make, do they matter? Not really. Right? What matters is the appointments. How many appointments are you going on? That's the goal. The goal is appointments, right? If you're working with sellers, you want to get to the listing appointment. Then you want to get the showing appointments, right? If you're working with a buyer, you want to start showing them properties. You want to start setting appointments. Get them for the first consultation, and set their appointments, right? The appointments are what matters. Like, put your mind around appointments. Appointments. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. So everything you do should be geared around, okay, if I don't have any business, how am I going to get appointments? That's it. If it's phone calls, great. If it's door knocking, great. If it's open houses, great, right? Like if it's networking, great. Whatever it takes, whatever works for you. But it's appointments. Not everything's about calls, right? If it is calls, try recording them. Listen to yourself. Do you sound salesy? Do you sound sleazy? Do you have commission breath? Do you sound uneducated? Do you not speak well? Are you not clearly speaking? Is it not concise? Did you answer a question not so great? It'd be a good idea. Record your phone calls. Just take an hour out of the day. Record the conversations that you have and see where you could have done better. And if you find an area for improvement, improve it, and then record it, and then record again. Right? And you're always improving. Always. Tony Robbins has an acronym, CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. Sometimes what works today might not work tomorrow. A lot of times what works today might not work tomorrow. So you need to be able to make those adjustments and make those refinements, right? Which takes us to the last one, refine until it becomes innate. Keep changing, and then innate means natural ability. The conversations become natural. I've made so many phone calls. I was happy last week when we did the in-person because there was an agent that visited us that was in the office with me in 2012 when I first started in real estate. And he confirmed to anybody that would ask, did Joe actually spend that much time on the phones? And he said, yeah, it's all I did. It's all I did. I was just on the phones. So phone calls for me they're just natural now. Right? The conversations are natural. The scripts are natural, right? And that's where you need to be, because it needs to be a natural conversation. Your conversation, even if it is scripted, can't sound scripted. It cannot sound scripted. It has to sound natural. They want to have a real conversation with you, right? So always apply, refine, repeat, right? Mastery comes from action. It's time. It's time. Right? The mother of the mother of skill is repetition. You want to build a skill, then just do the same thing over and over and over and over. You want to get really good at calling, then you got to make a lot of phone calls. If you don't want to make a lot of phone calls, then don't ever expect that you're going to be good at calling. You want to get good at door knocking, you got to knock on a lot of doors. If you don't want to knock on doors, then don't expect that you're going to go knock on 10 doors and think that you're going to get some sort of result, right? The mother of skill is repetition. You have to be doing the same things over and over and over. And if you're not willing, then find a different marketing method, find a different technique, right? If you're taking leads and you don't want to call them, so you're dropping them out of campaigns so that you don't have to call them, then you're not doing anybody a service, right? Certainly not yourself, right? All right, well, that's what we got for the day. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments, any arguments? Anybody not agree with what I have to say? All right, well, you've had your moments. So if there is nothing else, hopefully you'll join us next week. Next week will be the first week of March, Tuesday, noon to 1. We'll be doing our roundtable mastermind session. So you guys are welcome to come in and join. That's open to anybody at any brokerage. It doesn't really matter where you're at. These are, these are not geared necessarily towards just, this brokerage. These are open for everybody. So if you want to invite somebody, or if this training was helpful, please, feel free to invite them to the next one. Our next roundtable, or our next Ask the Broker, will be on March 10th, where we'll hit the second part of this series. Again, this is just the foundation. We're going to start getting, diving deeper into these things. So appreciate everybody here. Thank you all so much. Anyway, anything, pop in the lobby. Don't stay stuck. Lisa?
Nope, just thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, as always.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everybody. It's good seeing you all. Take care. We'll see you soon. Don't stay stuck.